the police may act, unilaterally on issues, and then the army may not be in position to know what's going on there. And in the armed forces, again, it looks like the Air Force, the Army, the SSS, and are working independently, unlike in the past.
That's how it looks to you, who is observing from the outside.
Yes. Unlike in the past, from the experience I had, we have what we call JIB, which is Joint Intelligence Bureau, which meets every week in the State House, to analyze problems of this nature.
Can I ask why you have that impression? What gives you that impression in terms of how they have carried out their operations?
You can see even the last time when a typical example of the attempted arrest of former DG SSS by AFCC and former DG of NIA also, where the the AFCC personnel, the DSS personnel, and NIA personnel clash. This is not acceptable. Issues like that.
Okay. Now, I'm just wondering, Dr. Amadi, I'm going to pose that question to you. Where would you say, you have identified the fact that, trust has broken down, and now we also have an ethnic dimension to this problem, which makes it even more complex when religion is added to it.
Absolutely.
Where would you say that we start sorting out the strands? It's a pity that we hardly hear from the president. The only time we heard him voice anything about this particular crisis was when he spoke to the Archbishop of Canterbury when he traveled for the Commonwealth Summit. And he talked about, people coming from outside, and, that's the first time we had an insight into what the president was thinking. But looking at what has been happening on the inside and looking at how complex the problem is becoming, where would you say we start building trust from?
I think, let me answer the question by saying that I hold the president responsible for the failure of his own strategy. The president says he wants to build a united country. Recently, he is a known nationalist who has fought for this country with his life, and a man who came to power with so much trust across the country. The first failure is the failure to recognize that Nigeria is a country that you need to deal with sensitivities. The World Bank, the 2016 governance report focusing on institutions and governance, made that point very clear, that in countries like Nigeria, fractured countries where you have multi-ethnic pluralism, you need to factor into your governance a strategy of appeasement and dealing with various stakeholder and community. So the idea of populating your security architecture leadership with people who, no matter their level of competence, people who are either related to you, either from ethnic or religious, creates a problem. Now, look at what's going on. The canned messages, sack the service chiefs. They've not gone through a rigorous competence test. The perception is critical. And for Mr. President not to acknowledge that this matters, destroying a whole decades, if you like, of containment, of dealing with national security through some level of, multiple involvement is very sad. It's not a wise way of dealing with your strategy. That's number one. Number two is that at this level now, look at the church community. The Catholic Church usually is a very deliberative, very intelligent and authoritative voice. They don't normally, get woken up so much. For them to issue that statement really signals a total failure of trust. And at this point, what we expect is some responsiveness, quick responsiveness, at three levels. One, at the level of engagement, close down engagement. At the level of symbolism, change some perceptions, so visuals is very important. Who is where? Three, at the level of change of strategy. Now look at the crisis in Benue when it happened. It took Mr. President quite a long time, and finally when they are more like an afterthought. Those are failure of leadership. You see, in a wartime like we are in a terror time, you need hands-on, boots on the ground kind of leadership. So I think the place we should start from is recreating trust three ways. I think National Assembly has a key role to play here, and they have not played that role well. After 9/11, the U.S. Congress set up a binational commission, a bipartisan commission. I expected that with the level of crisis of confidence in the military architecture, if the former general himself could come and say, this is ethnic cleansing by military, he has totally shredded the reputation and the effectiveness of the military. The National Assembly should set up a binational commission, a bipartisan commission, to review the whole problem of security and the military. In 3 ways, for example, we can't assume if people in ethnic groups says we don't trust this military, and in Zamfara, an emir also came out and said that the military is, not to be trusted. They're against us. So if important stakeholders put down the military and classify it as a partisan in such, terrible conflict, it calls for a binational commission, a bipartisan commission that reviews thoroughly. We're not going to take it on the military says so. Of course, the army has set up its own, that doesn't count because it's like being a judge your own case. Somebody has raised an issue trying to say that this military is aligned and killing us. That's really big. You expect a high-level, independent commission, not just to indict people, but to help us review something is wrong with our institution, that they are failing at the critical point. And we don't address institutional failure by simply making very pious statements. We deal with it by going to ground zero and looking at the design of those institutions and asking critical questions. So I think start-off point is to acknowledge that it's a failure of institution and therefore a need to have a closer review of operations, leadership, mentality. I mean, if a defense chief makes some statements that are
Dr. Amadi,
unwarranted,
I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts for us. Yeah. When we come back, we'll also be asking Major Bantam what his thoughts were when he heard those accusations from a former chief of army staff. In just a moment, please stay with us.